The Crooked Epic, 1, The Inn of Maniacal Madness, 7, Alex, The Train, 7B, 3. By sundown in Hob, Alex was finally done searching the uppermost levels of the inn for a vacant room to rest for the night. The lobby had been filled with soldiers and guards patrolling or changing shifts. Meanwhile, downstairs in the restaurant and bar, they were on break or vacation, and some were meeting with their peers, colleagues, friends, or families. Some simply enjoyed provisions of alcohol and amusements of games or music. Alex found himself alone after precariously entering a few doors on the third floor. He had searched the fourth and fifth, but both were crowded through the hallways, and the sixth floor only held an open and available exercise gym and a small closed day spa. In room 315 of the inn's third floor, Alex wound up on the left of the stairs in the middle of the hall. He had become uncomfortable with the notion of entering every door after the initial attempt on the fifth floor were dead ends, occupied, or containing people's unrecovered belongings. He decided to station himself in the middle of the hall for the more straightforward exit strategy. It was on the side with the windows facing Hobbs Lake and near the stairs to the lobby area and restaurant. The sixth floor's fitness center was as far up as he had gone, but there were signs on the stairs to the seventh floor which read "pool," among other languages which were possibly translations, and there was also an additional height to the walls and ceiling of the level. When Alex had ridden the horse to the border wall, he had not taken time to notice the unimaginable architectural volume of the inn. Now inside, he was intimidated by the populated rooms and areas and the total size of everything. He was happy to make it into a room, kept the lights off, and made himself visible again in the pale light which streamed through the thin curtains. Alex put the wand in one of his pockets and began to peruse a book sitting on the bed's end table, but most of it was in a foreign language. There were pictures of guns in the book, and the cover had the strange symbol of the 4. He looked at a Bible, too, which was in a drawer next to the bed, and it was in English. He pulled out his letters to his family as the sun set in the window. Grief was pulling down his head. His lonely fears weakened his heart. Alex lay down, helpless on the bed, as the light on the horizon became a deep shade of magenta through the curtains. As he lay still, his breaths echoed in his ears as he fought away the pain in his cheekbones and under his eyes until every exhale became a conscious relief as control against crying. Finally, he rolled over on his side, made himself sleep before any tears fell. He wished he was with his Ted and his father. He needed sleep after the nights he had survived, but he had too much energy to reach a deep rest after the morning in the briars. He woke up before midnight and turned on his side. He pulled his sleeping bag out of his backpack and tried to cover his body, attempting to force himself to stay in bed. Midnight came and he was awakened again by an echoing sound in his mind. It was a dream-like howling, a lone coyote somewhere in the darkness of Hob, or possibly his fantastic imagination. He felt hypnotized by it into unconsciousness, paralyzed, as he lay on his back and waited for it to return. 5 minutes went by and he heard the howl again. He was not dreaming it, but it had a magical essence, reaching room 315 from somewhere within the building. It was like it may have resounded vibrations throughout the very walls themselves, and he sat upright in bed to try to sense any commotion within the hotel or outside the town. Alex pushed his legs off the bed and stood up in the hotel room. He stepped into his shoes and walked over toward the window. Before he came to the windowsill, he reached into his pocket and withdrew the wand and implemented its special magic, rendering himself invisible. Nothing was visible outside either, however. He walked back to the door of his hotel and listened for any noise out in the hallways, but nobody was reacting with any alarm when he stuck his head through the door frame. He decided to hide his backpack, so he returned to his physical form, tucked back his sleeping bag, and put everything in a closet. Then he returned to his invisibility and went out into the hall to look for the animal, incognito. He walked down to the lobby and looked around for the front entrance, but nothing was unordinary, so he walked further down the next stairs to the restaurant in the basement. Upon stepping onto the dining area floor before walking to the bar, he heard the sound again from further below. He spun around to face the stairways which led down and saw the portal to the maze, round and ornamentally decorated with mirrors around the border, separated by silver-plated chains embedded with white pearls. Above it was a golden statue of a bald eagle holding golden wheatgrass. In the stage room and casino, the lower level of the basement, he looked at the sign on the right, which read "Exit" in English. It seemed like the only place which would be sensible to check, and it was also curious to Alex how there could be an exit in the lower areas of the building's basement. He walked through the door, and inside there were elevator lifts on either side, and straight ahead was a set of stairs leading down into a tunnel. He considered taking the lifts without knowing where they would let out, nor whether it would be too far from the portal to remain invisible, which caused its risk to be too high for him. So he started walking down the stairs into the tunnel, all of which was dimly lit throughout the duration of the steps, and once at the bottom he could not see to the end of it. Standing in the darkness, he saw how the stairs landed on a giant platform with enough space to walk behind them to an area where the lifts dropped. There were lockers with ventilation holes on either side, shut closed, and most had number pad systems below their handles. But forward marching, Alex pushed himself into the darkness, invisible and inexplicably enraptured. Alex moved through the tunnel with his imperceptible cloaking and silent steps. He felt himself move his legs and never tripped nor slowed down in the tunnel, lit only with tiny electric bulbs on the high corners of the walls and ceilings. The lights were shaped like lanterns, spaced dozens of feet, and used low wattage, barely enough to see the black linoleum-tiled floor. Under the lantern lights there were cords on both sides, hanging onto some pulley system 5 feet off the floor. After several hundred yards, the tunnel stopped at a wall. As he noticed it during the approach, he sensed something was unnatural about the end, yet did not see a door. He kept walking, and within the last 10 yards saw 2 walkways which met perpendicular to his tunnel and dropped down ramps across from each other at the wall. He moved forward and took the right path, saw it quickly angled right again, and went down a long ramp. The ramp was similarly lit with interspaced lantern lights as it reconnected with the path behind him and merged underneath his long tunnel. It descended for what seemed like a mile in the opposite direction as he had been walking, with 2 more hanging cords on each side. Alex felt groaning without making any audible noise and started frustratedly wondering if his search had become purposeless. His impatience was interrupted by a loud, lonesome howl, shaking his core and echoing through the tunnel. Alex turned and looked back up the tunnel he had come from. He had not checked the walls on either side where there were ventilated metal lockers by the stairs and at the top ramp wall. He looked down the long tunnel and cast off the wand's invisibility spell to better look behind the locked doors. The lockers had number pads underneath their sealed handles, but there was a couple of locks with no number pads, and he opened the one on the right. Inside there were carts like the ones used in mine shafts, and they all had cords with hooks to connect to the cables on the walls. Some were in rough shape, and there were not many in either locker cubby. Some wheels were missing. Some were cracked on the sides, and parts of undercarriages were shabby and needed repair. Alex looked to the other side, and the locker cubby had the same contents, but only 4 carts to the 7 on the right side. However, the space inside allowed Alex to see a metal panel on the wall, which was left partially open. Inside he saw buttons, green and red, and a lever with a corresponding wedge symbol to symbolize rising speeds and acceleration. There was also a bulb in the middle of the top part of the control panel, which was off, and had a lightning bolt symbol next to it symbolizing electricity, or lack thereof. Alex walked into the tunnel again and checked toward the stairs to see if anyone was there. He had not been followed yet, so he considered his options. He looked at the nearest locker on the right to the wall with the number pad and ventilation holes. There were several holes, and all were wide enough to let some light through to the cubby. He looked at the wand in his hand and placed its spell back around him, passing through the locked door with its magic. As he expected, several control panels with various functions encompassed the three inner walls inside. There was barely any light, though, and hardly any room to fit inside, but Alex released it and reappeared after examining the functions and symbols as much as he could. He pressed a big green button, heard a whir of electronics, and lifted a nearby lever, and there was a rattling of metal wires behind him. With the wand spell, he left the vicinity of the locker and stood in the middle of the tunnel as the cords glided down the wall toward the ramp, disappeared into a small slot in the wall. He repeated the process in the locker cubby on the opposite side and saw the hanging cord glided away from the ramp back to the stairs at the tunnel's beginning. First, he was impressed and walked down the ramp to witness the cords moving up and down the ramp, extending out from slots in the walls. But as he walked back to retrieve a cart, he decided it was dangerous for him with all the noise he was creating in the basement of the hotel, and decided to go turn the speed up for the descending cord before he took out a ruddy and rented cart with a shattered side and brought it down to the ramp. Alex attached the cart to the cord and ran with it to hop inside. His cart was steady and heading down the ramp fast at over 10 miles per hour. After 10 minutes, though, he began to worry he was being sidetracked from the overall mission of returning home. Even worse, he was afraid he would be found by guards at whatever location he ended up. Almost 5 minutes into the ride, he tried his wand and it would not work. When Alex looked down the ramp, he thought he saw the end of the cord where it returned into a slot in the wall below a lantern light. As he kept going, he saw the platform at the end of the ramp, and soon he was within less than 100 feet from the bottom of the giant excavation site, a mile below the hotel. When he was near the bottom, he saw the area below was filled with water, shining in a serene pool. But as he got closer, he realized the enormity of the water was massive enough to create a slow current which rippled under the platform and past the long ramp. Also, the lighting from the walls continued for several hundred feet, disappeared as the walls themselves ended too, as did the entire ceiling over a mysterious underground sea. The cart was coming quickly to the bottom of the ramp, and Alex jumped out before the cart's hook was unlatched at the wall slot. The cart's connector bounced off the wall, but the wheels landed within a rail which carried it toward the platform's edge. At the border, there was a loop in the track and a small boundary wall with short wooden doors leading onto a marina of piers of different lengths. Some boats were on docks, and a longer pier across the sides of the tunnel's walls which extended several hundred feet out into the water. The cart swerved in its tracks and began the rolling curl around the loop. Alex had observed a long lever which stuck out from beneath a wooden platform. He cranked it, and the rail stopped its movement.